What's up, everybody? Stocks by the numbers, welcome back. Quick update here on Lithium Americas Corporation, ticker symbol LAC, listed here on the New York Stock Exchange. Stock closed 245 a share, down 14 cents, almost 5.5% here on the day. On news that there was going to be a delay for a couple of hundred million from a second tranche investment from GM. So obviously, I can appreciate the fact that this stock has taken a hit today. However, I also read that GM may be running into like an issue or two, and that could potentially be the reason why this second round of funding was delayed, because maybe GM needs to have that extra cash on hand. But overall, in my opinion, I really don't see this as a big deal because again, the company got like 2.25 billion from the Department of Energy and already had the initial investment from GM, and just in my opinion, over the long term, I just don't see how. Again, we're talking about Thacker Pass. This is domestic here in the States, and we're talking about a lithium supply when we're using, again, they want to keep citing EV sales, which even though they're saying, have slowed down a little bit or might slow down, they're still, for the most part, kind of maintaining. Even Tesla, technically, they've been coming in light on the revenue side, but, technically they're maintaining like that 20 plus billion mark of revenue every quarter. So people are still, buying these EVs, but regardless of that, there are just so many devices and appliances now that use lithium batteries, rechargeable lithium battery. And it seems like if it's more efficient and we basically are starting to put it, in all of these objects across the board, then whether EV sales continue to grow, stagnate, sell off 2, 3%, chances are we're still going to need this lithium, which is why that funding came in my opinion, from the Department of Energy. They know we laid this out, right? Looking at the turmoil overseas, they basically see the writing on the wall, looking at the longer picture, and they're saying that, okay, LAC, they're going to start mining, they're going to be up and running in the next couple of years. Here's 2 billion, let's get it moving. So this is why I say, regardless of what the stock does here over the last year or over the next 18 months, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter because it's not necessarily taking anything away from the long-term picture. But let's look at some recent news here. So we looked at the stock last time. It was kind of like the middle of June. It was right here, I think, like the 12th to the 13th. I mentioned we were in this descending wedge. We came down to about 2.5. Stock ended up popping back up to 327. Tried to retest and get back above that 20-day moving average. Then you can see the rejection. We come back down basically to where we were, and then we broke lower, almost down to this fib here at $2. Stock hit a low at 202. Ran back up to this fib, 285, and is now slowly starting to channel back down. So technically now this is our support trend line, 202. And we come up, and you can see that we basically came down and almost touched that trend line. So 245, so we could potentially drop down. What was the low today? 241. Yeah, and it looks like, yeah, maybe like 240 around there could be the actual support level on this trend line. So we have to see now if it's going to bounce and try to come back up a couple of cents, or if it's going to break through this support channel and come back down and retest these very low twos again. And remember, even if it does break in the immediate short term, you don't know how the stock is setting up, right? Only time will tell. So for all we know, it could break this support trend line, which of course could make it bearish in the immediate short term, but it may come down right back to 202, which would then on the technical side form a double bottom, and then it could run and rally right back up to 3 plus, right? So only time will tell. But let's look at some of the news here over the last couple of months that has come out. This is talking about Alibaba, let's see, LAC, GM have agreed to extend the deadline for GM's second tranche investment in Thacker Pass lithium project until the end of the year. GM has reaffirmed its commitment to invest an additional $330 million in the project, and the extension of the outside date allows both parties to explore alternative investment structures and finalize a $2.25 billion loan from the U.S. Department of Energy. They were also saying that because it's an election year, they were saying that all of these, like energy companies who receive these loans and these handouts from the government themselves, they're trying to kind of push it through and set it in cement, concrete, if you will. They're trying to set it and get it done before these November elections, where potentially we could see some policy changes, and they may have to give the money back, or they might receive less money moving forward, or no money moving forward. So only time will tell. And I know people like to mention that right now, in my opinion, it seems like Trump is the front runner. And I know people like to mention that he's been talking about how he's going to lift the mandate on EVs, and you're still going to be able to buy regular, gas combustion engines. And I know he talks about hybrids, and we should be able to buy what we want, which in my opinion is true. I agree with that. But again, technically, I believe it was only like California that issued a mandate. But I mean, if people want it, people are going to buy it. That's really what it comes down to. So whether there was a mandate in California or not, I think they said by like 2030, 2035, they want to see all EVs over there. But regardless of the fact, if there's a person in Texas who wants an EV and likes the Tesla, they're just going to go out, they're going to buy the Tesla. That's what it comes down to. So that's why I'm saying, like, the sales are still there, and even if the EV sales kind of stagnate, you have to, in my opinion, the way I'm looking at it, you have to see that if they're throwing, several billion into this location to get it up and running so that we can start mining our own lithium domestically, then this is why I say that there has to be value there. They have to see value there. And of course, everything's run like a business, right, in this country. So if they're investing $2 billion now, this is why I'm saying I feel personally that they're looking out 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and they're saying, okay, this is probably going to generate a whatever 8 million, 10, 12 billion from this 2 billion investment, right? And also, even hypothetically, if they break even on the investment or even operate at a loss from what they initially put up, it's still going to be a domestic supply of lithium, which of course, depending on what happens moving forward, could actually turn out to be priceless, let alone worth a couple of billion. But separately, GM must face a class action across 26 states alleging it knowingly sold hundreds of thousands of vehicles with faulty transmissions. Right? So, actually, based on this news, in my opinion, I would think that GM may potentially go down and LAC may not have taken much of a hit, but we actually saw kind of the opposite, and GM, I think, was slightly green today, and LAC, again, took like 5.5% hit. But it could be very short-lived. See, shares of GM at the time of this were down 0.7%. LAC was down over 6%. Agreed to delay investment till the end of the year. Right, holds enough of the battery metal to build 1 million EVs annually. That's what this mine in Nevada is showing us here. Could produce enough lithium to build 1 million EVs annually. This is why, in my opinion, the investment from the DOE came in. First tranche closed in February. Got until December 20th, okay. Quote, they are making good progress towards scaling commercial production. This agreement will support the successful completion of the project. Successful execution of the loan agreement, which the company is rushing to finish amid uncertainties fueled by the November U.S. presidential election. Also, they mentioned that there was going to maybe be some news in the second half of 24, which, as you see, is where we are on the calendar. So this is why, again, they can slowly trickle the stock down back to the low twos, But then we can have something, similar to an ASTS where we get, one or two positive catalysts, and all of a sudden everyone piles back in, and the stock is viewed as, severely undervalued, and we go back, we go from 210, 220, and we start rallying back up to, 370, $4 a share all of a sudden, no problem. But only time will tell. Donald Trump has pledged to, quote, end the electric vehicle mandate, and plans laid out by former Trump administration officials to Project 25 document to shutter the loans program office have forced miners to try to close agreements before Joe Biden leaves office. So it may get pushed through here just inside of the next couple of months. Yep, we're seeing this headline consistently everywhere. I just want to see nothing else was mentioned here. We're moving, maintain, and hold at Deutsche Bank about 2 weeks ago. Price target cut to $2.50 from $3. Now remember, a lot of you may say, why is the price target so low? Because I believe that technically these price targets that these analysts lay out are over the next 12 months, right? So if they said that they're not going to start mining until, 2026, 2027, then yeah, for the time being, right now, it may just be worth a couple of dollars. But in my opinion, we looked at the numbers in previous videos, the actual fundamentals. And if we look at, again, assets minus liabilities yields total equity. If we look at the total equity, if we look at the current book value per share of the company, in my opinion, it's undervalued and is technically trading below book value, which is above $3 a share currently. So this is why I said that, yeah, they could beat it up in the short term, but also at the same time, they can't completely take it out, behind the barn and put it out of its misery, because it can't go much lower. There is already established value there, and then there's also the prospect of future potential growth on the horizon. So this is why you can't completely take it to the shed. Almost reminded me something similar of an ASTS, right? They brought it all the way down to what, like the low twos, 240, wherever it was when we saw it before those announcements started to come out. But what happened when it reached that level? It was predominantly pretty much flat, right? So that's what I mean. They beat it up, but they knew that they couldn't really beat it up anymore. In my opinion, that's the way, I was looking at it. Because I think at the time, the market cap was, like 400 million, 500 million or something like that. And that's what I mean. If you look at, the cash they're holding on hand and the future growth potential on the horizon, plus you look at, whatever assets the company's holding, the equity on the balance sheet, it's like, yeah, at minimum, it's worth a couple of $100 million, right? So that's why I'm saying something like that, excuse me, something like that, they couldn't take it from 240 down to 70 cents. You know what I mean? That would have been an extreme over exaggeration. And that's why I feel something similar with the LAC here. That's why I think as soon as they brought it down all the way to 202 here, almost to this fib, and had it hit new lows, I mean, it immediately rallied almost 50% back up to 285 and immediately bounced, right? And technically is channeling upward right now. So that's why, in my opinion, they can't beat it up too much from this level. But of course, if markets really start selling off, it's going to drop probably. But again, basically, these price targets, we know that it's going to take, at least 2 to 3 years before we really start reaping the rewards from this mine. So that's why right now they can't put a price target of, $18 a share, So that's why you're seeing these lower price targets. But maintain the buy at B. Riley. Price target cut from 4.5 down to 4. Maintains buy rating. Deutsche Bank trims price target from 3 to 2. Maintains hold. Sector perform at Scotia. Price target cut from 5.5 down to 3. Lost 7 cents a share. Reported earnings about 2 weeks ago. Okay, we're moving. Had the original price target at 12 from B. Riley. Piper Sandler, $3.90 a share. Neutral rating. And where we look at it, the middle of June. Okay, so we're rolling a little bit. We're moving. Lithium market will remain in surplus unless major producers significantly cut supply. expects the growing lithium surplus to last until year-end 2028, before the market could then revert into a deficit in the later years of this decade. So if this does come to fruition, this timeline, then if LAC is beginning to mine, tail end of 26, potentially first half of 27, then on the news, in my opinion, of them, completing construction and then actually beginning to start mining lithium, like all of those catalysts should probably drive the stock up higher. But you may not see a massive breakout if there is a lithium surplus. However, because there are so many eyes on it, because it's going to be a domestic lithium miner, then if the surplus does reverse in 2028, then it's going to make LAC significantly more valuable, in my opinion. So again, a lot of these price targets are lower. This stock kind of fell out of the spotlight because people are saying to themselves, yeah, this is potentially going to be massive, but it's not going to happen for a couple of years. So this is why you're just kind of seeing like this slowly dripping down in the chart of LAC. According to Deutsche Bank, main driver of the surplus is volumes coming out of China, right? Which, of course, once LAC is up and running, we would potentially try to reduce the lithium coming from China so we can have, our own domestic lithium, where production has continued to grow and improve in the last 12 months despite a challenging pricing environment. On the demand side, EVs remain the main driver. See, they always try to bring it back to EVs. And while that may be more of the bulk, we know it's not the only end product that is going to benefit from this lithium. Deutsche Bank said its demand forecasts are 4% lower in 2024 to 103 million tons lithium carbonate equivalent, but 1% higher in 25 and 3% in 2030 compared to prior estimates. So if the demand forecasts, wait, hold on. Oh, its forecasts are 4% lower. All right, okay, sorry. But even if they're slightly above what we're expecting, again, this is when LAC is going to be mining. So it's like I always say, it's technically not an issue until it's an issue. Deutsche Bank, lithium price recovery unlikely. Overcapacity. This is basically where we looked at the stock. National Bank, sector perform rating. And you can see back here again, this like $12 price target was adjusted to whatever, 4.5 or whatever we saw, but at the time it was 5 to 12, and that's what I mean. They're basically, again, these analysts, they see what's going on. They originally had $10, $12, and then they see that the stock is trending downward, and also the timeline, like we said, is going to be 2-3 years out. So now that's why I'm saying they're technically lowering their price targets, and what they're really saying by having a price target of $3.5, $4 a share is they're probably indicating that, yeah, we came down to these lows of 2, but now moving forward, the stock should, probably remain in a channel between like 2 and 4 moving forward. But there was also another article, which I cannot find, of course, bear with me, because it spoke about the second half of 2024. So I just want to try to find that quickly. Of course, this is all dead air time, basically. Okay, weak demand. No, where is that article? Because it was talking, again, it mentioned something on the timeline Here we go. Right. March received 2 billion plus from DOE. Fund eligible construction costs to produce an initial 40,000 tons per annum of battery grade lithium carbonate. Company continues to work closely with the DOE and expects to close the DOE loan in the second half of 2024, which is now, this period anyway. Site preparation for major earthworks has been completed, and Thacker Pass is prepared for the commencement of major construction following issuing full notice to proceed FNTP expected in second half 24 following closing of the DOE loan. So this is why I'm saying we could have some potential catalysts lining up to add some momentum into LAC stock price over the next, we'll say, like 3 to 6 months, right? Because on the news that they closed this loan, you may see the bump up in stock price. And then, of course, this notice here, and if they actually begin breaking ground, then it could, because again, like they said, they have to wait for the loan to close, then they get the notice, and then the commencement for major construction. So it could potentially lead to a little snowball effect of positive catalysts, similar to what we saw with something like ASTS, right? So if the loan gets closed, for all you know, the stock at the time could be whatever, 270, it could run up to 310, 320, and then once they begin major construction, that may pop the stock up back to 4 plus, 4.5 plus. Now all of a sudden a lot of eyes are on it. Oh, they're actually breaking ground, and they're starting to build this out now. Okay, now I'm going to step in. I'm going to start taking a position in LAC for the longer term. So a lot of investors may be just sitting on their hands right now, waiting for the next couple of months for a lot of this news to hit, and then they're going to, step in. I'm hearing a lot of noises here on my end. My apologies. Company continues to focus increasing level of detailed engineering, over 30% design completed. Execution planning throughout Q2 24, procurement packages and executable purchase orders were put in place in preparation for FNTP, which is this notice again. So that's why I'm saying all of we have a handful of catalysts that can literally be coming out just inside of the next couple of months here with LAC. During Q2, the company advanced site preparation for the workforce hub, a planned all-inclusive housing facility for construction workers. The hub will be built to align with Thacker Pass Phase 1 construction schedule, which again could potentially be starting in the next couple of months. In August 24, the company received an $11.8 million grant from the U.S. Department of Defense to support an upgrade of the local power infrastructure and to help build a transloading facility. This is what I mean. If you see it, you have all of these investments kind of coming in from all these different avenues, all leading into LAC and this one site and this one project. This is why I'm saying, in my opinion, unless we really receive some negative news here of the workings and the insides of LAC itself, yes, we may sit here stagnant and flat for the next year and a half, 2 years, who knows? But all of this, I feel, cannot be flowing into this one company if there's no value there. During the 3 months, 27.7 million of construction capital costs, other project-related costs were capitalized. Company sitting on over 375 million in cash at the moment. But yeah, I wanted to bring up this article because again, I know they mentioned talking about the timeline with a couple of things coming out now, the second half potentially of 2024. So we'll see what happens. But here in the short term, in the technicals, right now, this is your support trend line after the drop to the new lows. So we'll keep an eye on roughly that 240 level. Let's see what's going on in stock charts. RSI ran up, yeah, looking like to about maybe like almost 60, and now we're slowly pulling back, 45.5. Looks like we're having multiple rejections off the 50-day moving average. Came right down to the mid Bollinger Band and then stopped. Bottom Bollinger Band 206. MACD with the curling potentially could touch and cross back down to the downside, which is why I'm saying it could break that support trend line and start looking weaker and head back down to 206, this Bollinger Band, or it could retest the low of 202, but then you may have another surge and another bounce coming in. But again, unless some unforeseeable big positive catalyst comes in that somehow it positively advances the timeline, then chances are we're probably going to have just a tight channel in this stock over the next year or two potentially, until we actually start mining. But again, once those little pieces of news start coming out in the next couple of months, hopefully, you may start to see momentum again. And then all of a sudden, it could run back up to 4 and change. And then people are going to say, wow, it was down at 2. I knew I should have added it. Now it's at 4. No one's selling, right? They had news that, they're starting construction and everything's according to plan. Everything's working out well. I should have bought it. You know what I mean? So you're going to start to have some people with that kind of mentality. And that's why you could potentially see a run up to like 3.5, 4. And then maybe it can hold that level for, 8 months, 12 months, whatever, before something else happens. But on the weekly, the RSI technically is lower, but we can potentially retest that 30 sub 30 benchmark. So right now the weekly RSI is sitting a little above 33, which is why I'm saying we could potentially drop a little bit more, have the stock pull back to the lower twos, and then we can have another potential RSI bounce from our traders tracking it on the weekly. Let's look at the pivot points real quick. I'll let you go. And you can see, I was trying to hold this pivot point here of 277, and of course recently got up there and then has rejected just in the last week, down almost 10% this week. Let's switch over to the daily. And we can see, yeah, so that support trend line, it was looking like about 240, maybe 239 on my screen. And you can see we have a pivot point here of 238. Right? So this is why sometimes we draw out the trend lines and they're not absolutely specifically exact. So it could technically break below the trend line, but it would be breaking right to this support pivot point, and then you can have a bounce and it can come back up to the 50-day. Or it could run back up here to 283, back to this pivot point. Right? So only time will tell. Of course, we have to take it day by day and week by week. But right now, technically, yeah, it is kind of looking weak in the technicals. But again, with a handful of those catalysts now on the horizon, potentially coming out just inside of the next couple of months, that can kind of reignite the value of LAC, and that can drive some volume, some new volume anyway, to come back into the company. Because if we look at the stock here, we spoke about them taking care of their debt, right? It was up here at 46 million. Now it's down here. It's literally only a handful of millions at 4.6 million right now. Technically, the free cash flow this time last year was a loss of 28 million and change. Now we're down to a loss of 31 million. However, we do have more cash on hand, again, sitting here at 375 mil. We have short and long-term assets outweighing liabilities. Balance sheet looks very healthy in my opinion, because the company, again, at the moment doesn't really have to take on much liabilities. And we can see that the assets slowly growing, assets minus liabilities yields total equity. Look at the equity now, above 660 million. Our market cap, 534 million. And the company's holding 375 million cash just in hand, just cash on hand, right? So this market cap right now, there are multiple ways to look at it, but the value of the business is only trading at 1.5 times cash on hand, right? Not even looking at assets or, potential future revenue that can come in. Forget all that. Right now, it's only trading about 1.5 times cash on hand. But total equity, 664.5 million, we'll call it. The debt, again, drop in the bucket. That would bring equity minus debt. That would bring us down to 660 million of like equity fair value, quote unquote. And then if you add in the cash, you're talking about over a 900 million billion plus, quote unquote, fair valuation, in my opinion. Which is why, again, with the market cap down here at 500 million, I know it sucks in the short term, because a lot of you may have bought this at like $7 or $8, so you're wondering what the heck is going on. But it really can't go much lower. And as we said, looking at equity and looking at the cash on hand, we could value this company at 800-900 million. So that's why just bouncing off a random pivot point or forming a double bottom at this low, like I speculated, and then it could potentially spike back up. I mean, we have room we can bring the stock up to $3.50, $4, no problem, and it would actually be justified just based off of what they're holding on the balance sheet and the cash on hand. And the book value per share has been growing very nicely over the last several quarters, and you can see now the current value is below book value. All right, book value per share now 305. Stock sitting here 245. It's even sub book value for last quarter at 250. So that's why, again, in the short term, they want to beat it up. You're seeing a sea of red in the position, and you're getting anxious, you're getting stressed out. I understand all that. But again, take a step back and, in my opinion, look at the big picture, look at the broad view, and I feel that it's going to take some years, but I feel that there is value here. In its current state, in the fundamentals, I think it's undervalued, but also more importantly, if we're talking 3, 5, 7 years down the road, chances are if this company gets up and running and there are no issues and they start mining lithium and they start generating revenue and who gave them an order, this company needs an order, I think all of that excuse me, is really going to snowball down the road long term. And again, unless some big negative comes out, I personally still like LAC for the longer term. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to end it there. So once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Have a good weekend. Huh?